In the early 1950s, around the time of Turing's seminal paper on morphogenesis, a brilliant Russian chemist by the name of Boris Belousov was beginning his own investigations into the chemistry of nature. Deep behind the Iron Curtain, in a lab at the Soviet Ministry of Health, he was beginning to investigate the way our bodies extract energy from sugars. Just like Turing, Belousov was working on a personal project, having just finished a distinguished career as a scientist in the military. In his lab, Belousov had formulated a mixture of chemicals to mimic one part of the process of glucose absorption in the body. The mix of chemicals sat on the lab bench in front of him, clear and colourless while being shaken. As he mixed in the final chemical, the whole solution changed colour. Now, this isn't particularly remarkable. If we mix ink into water, it changes colour. But then something happened that made no sense at all. The mixture began to go clear again. Belousov was astounded. Chemicals can mix together and react, but they shouldn't be able to go back on themselves, to apparently unmix without intervention. You can change from a clear mixture to a coloured mixture, fine, but surely not back again. And it got weirder. Belousov's chemicals didn't just spontaneously go into reverse. They oscillated. They switched back and forth from coloured to clear, as if they were being driven by some sort of hidden chemical metronome. With meticulous care, Belousov repeated his experiment again and again. It was the same every time. His mixture would cycle from clear to coloured and back again, repeatedly. He discovered something that was almost like magic, a physical process that seemed to violate the laws of nature. Convinced he'd discovered something of great importance, Belousov wrote up his findings, keen to share his discovery with the wider world. But when he submitted his paper to a leading Russian scientific journal, he received a wholly unexpected and damning response. The editor of the journal told Belousov that his findings in the lab were quite simply impossible. They contravened the fundamental laws of physics. The only explanation was that Belousov had made a mistake in his experiment, and the work was simply not fit for publication. The rejection crushed Belousov. Deeply insulted by the suggestion his work had been botched, he abandoned his experiments. Soon he gave up science altogether. The tragic irony was that, divided as they were by the Iron Curtain, Belousov never encountered Turing's work. For if he had, he would have been completely vindicated. It turns out that Belousov's oscillating chemicals, far from contravening the laws of physics, were actually a real-world example of precisely the behavior Turing's equations predicted. While the connection might not appear obvious at first sight, other scientists showed that if you left a variation of Belousov's chemicals unstirred in a petri dish, instead of simply oscillating, they self-organize into shapes. In fact, they go beyond Turing's simple blobs and stripes to create stunningly beautiful structures and patterns out of nowhere.
The amazing and very unexpected thing about the BZ reaction is that someone had discovered a system which essentially reproduces the Turing equations. And so from what looks like a very, very bland solution emerged these astonishing patterns of waves and scrolls and spirals.
Now, this is emphatically not abstract science. The way Belousov's chemicals move as coordinated waves is exactly the way our heart cells are coordinated as they beat. Animal skins and heartbeats, self-organization seems to operate all over the natural world.